Hello, dear English teachers in Peru and English teachers from other countries. Welcome to our 11th Spring Webinar Series, Innovation and Didactic Strategies in English Language Teaching. You were invited to enjoy another interesting session today, teaching strategies to develop cross-language connections. It's important to follow and first, I would like to invite you to follow us on our social networks, for example, Facebook, WhatsApp, Telegram. Here you can find a lot of resources that you can use in your lessons. Also, I'd like to invite you to subscribe on our channel in YouTube. Now it's important to consider some instructions. Please, teachers, type your questions in the comment section. The answers to your questions and comments will be replied by our guest speaker at the end of the webinar in the question time section. When finishing the webinar, we will share a link for you to have access to the exit ticket, which will be available just for 15 minutes. Now it's time to know about our guest speaker. Please, Ms. Pamela Salazar, could you introduce him?
Of course, my dear Sulamita, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here with us once again. Today, we are going to have a great guest. I'm talking about Jesus Nicho. Mr. Nicho, Jesus earned his Master of Arts in Culturally and Linguistically Diverse Education from the University of Colorado, USA. He's a senior team lead and Denver Public Schools, as well as an education faculty member at UCIL, San Ignacio de Loyola University. But Mr. Nicho is not alone. He's accompanied with his students. I'm going to introduce them. Here we have Andres Avila Barrutia. He's a foreign language teacher at IPNA since 2016. We have also Christian Ramirez Guaman. He's also a foreign language teacher at IPNA since 2018. And we have more and more guests. Here we have Jessica Mendoza Rivas Plata. She's an EFL teacher. She has worked at IPNA for 6 years. Marilyn Cadillo, she's an EFL teacher at IPNA North Lima branch in Lima, Peru. Sharon Yontop Mendez, she is an EFL teacher and majoring in education at UCL. Soledad Rivera Inostroza, she's an EFL teacher and majoring in education at UCL. We have more guests, I think. Yeah. Jessie Adriansen Robledo, she's an EFL teacher and majoring in education at UCL. Luis de la Vega Castillo, he's an EFL teacher and majoring in education at UCL. Miguel Ángel Mori Guillén is an English teacher at IPNA San Miguel in Lima, Peru. Sergio Chavez Lezama, he's an EFL teacher and majoring in education at UCL too. Christopher Vera Prada, he's an EFL teacher for he has been an EFL teacher for 7 years at IPNA, Euridiomas, Berlis, and Idiomas Hub. Carla Ledesma Grandbon. She's an EFL teacher. She has worked at IBNA for 7 years. And the last but not least, Carlos Ñarvincopa Luna. He's an EFL teacher and majoring in education at UCELT. Thank you for being here, my dear guest. Be all of you welcome. The floor is now yours.
Alrighty, thank you. Thank you so much, Pamelita. Just quick thing, let me share my screen really quick. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, just good afternoon and thank you. And we see that there are many people just connected, and let me see if we can do this really quick. Okay, just a second, please. Just a moment. All righty, so let me do this really quick. I hope that you, wherever you are in Peru, you are just doing great, okay? Because we wanted to do this with you. We were looking forward to just sharing some of the things that we do on a daily basis. Okay, so let me see this. Yeah. All righty. Then we say present. All righty. So today we're going to be talking about teaching strategies to develop cross-language connections. Okay, but the idea here is we're going to be sharing some ideas about teaching L2. All of us teach English as a foreign language, but these can be applied to any target language, but using our mother tongue, using our native language, of using our home language. So teaching L2 using L1. So today, I'm not going to be the one talking. Today, I have a group of students facilitating this webinar. So this group of students are going to be in charge of sharing ideas with you. And please, any comments, any ideas that you may have, please, you have the comment box, so you can share what you know about the topic, and any questions that you may have, please just do so as well. Alrighty, so let's start off with Carla. Carla, would you please take it away? Thank you, Carla.
Thank you, Mr. Nicho. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Let me then tell you a little bit about today's objectives. Please, next. So, by today's session, teachers will be able to define cross-language connections, big ideas, explain strategies to develop cross-language connections to teach L2, which is the foreign language, right, the second language, using L1, which is the mother tongue, and implement cross-language connections strategies to teach L2 using L1. So now let's meet the team. There's Carla Ledesma, me.
Sergio Chen.
Christopher Vera.
Jesse Adrián Sen.
Luis de la Vega.
Marilyn Cadillo.
Copa.
Andrés Ávila.
Jessica Mendoza.
Miguel Muri.
Cristian Ramírez.
Sharon Yoldok.
Yes, thank you. And then me, of course. But I will just share some ideas with you at the end. All right? All right, thank you. Now we have Sergio, please.
Thank you, Mr. Nicho. So good evening, everybody, and dear fellow teachers, people who are probably watching the broadcast as well. I welcome once again to our webinar. And to begin with, I would like to know a little bit about your teaching approach in a situation. So please, for this, use the chat to give us your answers here. So picture this. Imagine you are in a class and one student, right, in the class asks you in Spanish, ¿Cómo se dice take it easy en español? Could you type in the chat your answer, please? A student asked a question in Spanish about an expression in English, right? ¿Cómo se dice take it easy en español? What would you do if this happened? Okay, let's take a look at the chat. Yes, you can use the chat box below. Yes, people still greeting. Yes, good evening again. Just to go over the question again, just imagine you're in a class. One student asks you in Spanish, ¿Cómo se dice take it easy en español? And how would you, or what would you do if that happened? All right, for example, one comment, Christian says, tómalo con calma. Priscilla as well, tómalo con calma. Liz Diaz says, relax. Thank you very much. Marlene, nice, hello, good evening. Thank you very much for the partners who are typing in the chat. Tómalo con calma again. Tranquilo, I would say relax. Tómalo con calma. So as you can see, very interesting answers. Thank you very much for the partners who are interacting with us. And yeah, some teachers prefer to use Spanish and explain it, but others relied on, English, right? To explain it, like using synonyms like relax. In this webinar, we will address how an ESL class can use both English and L1 in an effective way with different strategies to teach L2 using L1. So to continue with this part, our partner Marilyn Cadillo will talk about cross-language connections.
Thank you, Sergio. Bilingual education and second language immersion programs have operated on the premise that the bilingual students' two languages should be kept separate, although it is appropriate to maintain a separate space for each language. It is also important to teach for transfer across languages. Although bilingual education programs of various kinds have been in existence since ancient times, evaluative research on their consequences for children's literacy and academic development is recent. That's why today we will explore biliteracy, meta-language, and translanguaging. I'll pass the floor to my colleague, Luis de la Vega.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. Now, thank you so much, everybody, for being here, and it's great to share this with you as fellow teachers, as fellow professionals. So, talking about biliteracy in the first part, let's take a look at these two texts. For example, probably you might recognize this character, Dolores. This is something that is enjoyed by anybody. This is especially for young kids, 6, 8, 10 years old, but this kind of reading is really something that someone can really enjoy when they read it. Let's take a look at above text. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. We can notice that there is some rhythm, there is some rhyme. And when we take this into different language, for example, in Spanish, a menos que alguien como tú se interese de verdad, nada va a mejorar jamás. Now, we can see that the meaning is the same in both languages, but we can also notice that, for example, the word awful, that expression is not commonly used to refer to that same idea in Spanish. This kind of understanding in reading takes more time to acquire for students, because we don't have to check only the meaning of word by word. We have to check the whole context. And that is the meaning of biliteracy. We have to be able to read proficiently in two languages to transfer the knowledge, to transfer what we know, what we can code from one language to the second language. And let's take a look into what it is. For example, biliteracy is more than just communicating orally. Bilingualism is going to require us to speak fluently, to communicate orally proficiently. But here we have to read and write proficiently in two languages. And we have to recognize that this is an ongoing process that requires time to meet its goal. Biliteracy is not going to be acquired in one cycle, in 1 month, in 1 year. It's going to take forever because we are always in the ongoing process of learning more. And with that, we learn more vocabulary, we learn how to code more, and we always in that process. Now, to check something else in the next part. Becoming literate in two languages differs from becoming literate in one. Literacy might be a challenge, especially in the part of reading, because we have to be in constant training, little by little. And this approach for our learners, starting young, continuing this process when they turn into adolescence, into adulthood, it's going to be important to program and to plan our classes in order to meet the goals that we want. An important difference is that students benefit from having two languages that interact and complement on one another, because we are going to be able to contrast, compare languages, and we are also going to be able to make these cross-language connections. And this is where we're going to see the development of meta language, because we are not only going to think in one language, we have to think in two languages, two ways to code everything we see, but by keeping the same meaning. Now, I'll give the floor to my partner, Christopher. The audience is all yours.
Thank you so much, Luis. Thank you so much. Our next concept is meta-language. Even though it might seem a bit technical, it has a very simple meaning. One way to define meta-language is as the language that we use to describe other languages. To put it another way, all those words and phrases that we use to describe language, such as verbs, nouns, adjectives, or phrasal verbs, they are all part of meta-language. Meta-language helps us understand the language better. And in case of biliteracy, it helps us understand the relationships between one language and the other. Next slide, please. However, a common error can be to focus too much on form. So today, teachers, we ask you to focus on form. Yes, to teach form, it's okay, but to focus more on meaning-focused meta-language. A meaning-focused activity can be simply to set a real-life communicative task in which students get to practice, to use the language, and to learn some meta-language. Now, to continue with the next concept, we continue with Jessie Adriansen.
Thank you, Christopher. Okay, our next key concept is translanguaging. All right, let's start defining what translanguaging is. According to Garcia, an emerging bilingual student has one linguistic repertoire from which they select features strategically to communicate effectively. In other words, translanguaging is like choosing elements from the languages that the student speaks to communicate appropriately. Okay, the focus of translanguaging is communication. Now, when talking about that relationship between translanguaging to language, all right, we can say that language is action and practice and not a simple system. Let's take, for example, the word laggy, okay? In the past, we didn't have this word in the dictionary, but it was added last September. And why? Because of its constant use. That's why we say that language is action. Now, as the third main point is translanguaging as pedagogy. The teacher is aware that the linguistic repertoire of the student goes beyond that of the language practices in the classroom, right? Everybody can use translanguaging in their classes. It can be a monolingual teacher or a bilingual teacher, okay? Now, bear in mind that translanguaging is always purposeful. We cannot come up with that translanguaging activity in the middle of the class. It should be planned in advance so it works efficiently. Now, translanguaging in assessment. Translanguaging allows to show what they know using whichever language practices are at their disposal. As Garcia says, we should evaluate the student's competency on language, but not in a language, all right? Now, finally, translanguaging has shown its effectiveness since it permits students and teachers to acknowledge as valid the full range of linguistic practices of bilinguals. An example on how to use translanguaging in class. Teachers can make students read a text in English and then let them discuss some comprehension questions in their native language. It might be Spanish, Aymara, Quechua, or any other native language that our students speak. Now, that's all with the key concepts we have. Let's have Marilyn to introduce the cross-language strategies that we're gonna present.
Thank you, Jessie. In an increasingly multilingual world, the way in which learners draw on their mother tongue and knowledge of other languages when learning a new one in various ways takes on increasing importance because that today we want to share knowledge related to cross-language connection strategies such as anchor chart, así se dice, bilingual books, cognates, preview review, scaffolding, code switching, and the keyword method. I'll pass the floor to my colleague, Juan Yavicopa.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. I got it from here. So good evening to everyone. I'm glad to show you the first strategy of tonight's webinar, which is anchor charts. First of all, let me explain what exactly anchor charts are. Well, they are posters that are created to record and display important points about a lesson. As we know, most of our students are visual learners, so this strategy will be very handy. Well, you will see the moments in which you can use this one. All right, now, why I highly recommend you using this strategy in your sessions, because they are great scaffolded support. Especially, as I told you in the beginning, they are a great visual reference that can be used not only by the teacher, but also by the students whenever it's necessary. All right. Now, there are steps that we need to follow to make an anchor chart. First of all, we need to choose a learning objective. Once we have established it, the second step to do is to draw an outline and a title. Keep in mind that these steps should be done before performing in the classroom. Next, and the most important step, which is to complete the anchor chart, but not by yourself. We have to complete these anchor charts with our students all together. And the last step would be to hand this anchor chart in a visible place in the classroom. Now, let me give you an example with a personal experience, right? On the next slide, I remember when I started teaching students, when I started working as an English teacher, I had a basic class and I asked my students, why should we stop using cell phones when we are driving? And unfortunately, I didn't get the answers that I was expecting, right? That's when I came across with anchor charts and I started using them. So I made these posters with my students, but even with the posters visible in my classes, I could notice that I still wasn't getting the answers that was expected from them. So what I did is to ask my students in their native language, which is Spanish, so what expressions do we use to give an opinion? And they started by saying, well, teacher, yo pienso, yo creo. And with those expressions, I created the poster with them. That's why we can see in this anchor chart, which is called the Oreo technique. Oreo because, well, the initials stand for the following words. O stands for opinion, R stands for reason, E for examples, and finally O for opinion again, but as a conclusion. Well, as you can see the expressions here, in opinion, we have I think, I believe. Well, to explain some reasons, we have another reason, one reason, and expressions that are going to help the students whenever they want to give an opinion about a certain topic, which is why here it's very important to set the objective from the very beginning. Once you have the objective, you can use the correct anchor chart for the class that you are planning. Finally, I would like to stress that even though it is a highly recommended technique because it's a visual support for our students, we don't have to abuse of their use, because sometimes the students may get distracted during the classroom instead of paying attention to our sessions. So it's a really good technique, but just keep in mind that. Now, to talk about our next strategy, which is called Así se dice, we have Andrés Ávila. Andrés?
Thank you very much, Juan. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for giving us this great opportunity. So now let's continue with Así se dice, right? This is a strategy mainly used in bilingual classrooms. We know that in the United States, for instance, there are students from different parts of the world, different cultural backgrounds, and of course, different mother tongues. So that's why this strategy takes relevance, as this also happens in our continent, not only our country, because I read in the chat box that some of you are from other countries. I read Colombia, for example. So I mean, in South American schools, we also have students with various cultural backgrounds. They might speak different languages, and así se dice could be a meaningful technique for them too. When using así se dice, students are expected to make literal, not only literal, but also conceptual, which is purposeful translations. Not everything they translate is going to be literal, word per word translated. It's not exactly like that. When using this strategy, students are also expected to interpret what the person, or let's say the author of a book, try to mean or try to say, try to express. Well, something else to take into account is that this strategy shouldn't be implemented roughly. This is a process. As students get to higher grades, the ratio between the second and the native language varies. For instance, in kindergarten, the ratio might be 90 to 10, which is 90% of the instruction is given in the native language, and just 10% of it is given in the second or the target language, which might be English for us, as we are English teachers, right? And as they move forward, when they reach third grade, for instance, the ratio is 60 to 40. This is 60% of the instruction is given in the native language, and now 40% of it is done in the second language. Finally, when using así se dice, students look at the nuances across languages. What do I mean by this? Well, this is how one language communicates the same idea, but in a slightly different way. And this is part of the compelling challenges that students face when using this strategy. We have, let's say, reflexive verbs. In Spanish, we say, se preguntó, se lesionó, se sorprendió. But how would you translate that se? How can we translate that? For us, that might be easy because we know English, but for them, as it is their second language, it's hard. It's hard. It is very challenging for them. And also we have idiomatic expressions. For example, if you want to say, if we are asking, for example, ¿me tomas el pelo? Or ¿me estás tomando el pelo? How can we translate that? What are we going to say? Do you grab my hair? Are you grabbing my hair? we know that that is not the exact translation, right? So they need to interpret the message. Now, let me give you an example. Let's try to translate something. And to do this, you can use the chat box, okay? You can help us using the chat box there in the YouTube. So this is what you have to translate. Now, this is not take it easy or tómalo con calma. This is a little bit more complex. No tengas miedo de dar un gran paso. Un precipicio no se pasa a saltitos. So how can we translate this? Maybe you can help us in the chat. Are you pulling my leg? Nice. Yes, in the comments. This is a little bit difficult, I know. But try it, you can do it. No, I repeat it, okay? No tengas miedo de dar un gran paso. Un precipicio no se pasa a saltitos. How can we translate that? I like this. Don't feel fear to make a huge step. I like it. Thank you very much, Alejandra. Sé atrevido. Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Silvia. I mean the translation, right? Así se dice en inglés. Okay. Atrévete a hacerlo. Okay. Thank you very much, Betty. You can do little by little. I like it. Thank you very much, Annette. Don't afraid to grow means work hard. Okay. Thank you very much, Sander. Don't be fear of taking a great step. Elizabeth, thank you very much. Don't be afraid to take a leap. Thank you, Dahlia. Good job. Don't be afraid to give a great step. Cliff, thank you very much. My English lessons. Thank you. Don't be afraid. Thank you very much, Robert. Excellent. Let me show you what the real translation is. So this is así se dice in English. So maybe we can go to the next slide. Yes. So there you have it. No, it says, do not be afraid to take a big step. A precipice hopping is not past. So this is how you say that sentence or that quotation, that quote in English. So as you can see, this is a very good way to help students learn a language. They like it. They have fun. In a real classroom, you would have students work collaboratively in pairs or in groups. So also that interaction, discussion, struggle is useful and meaningful for them. So I'd say that así se dice is quite a good option. It is highly recommendable. So that's everything about así se dice. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with our colleague, Jessica Mendoza. She will talk about bilingual books. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Andres. Thank you. And well, now I will take it over. As my colleague Andres Avila mentioned previously, L1 in an English classroom is possible. Even more, it is beneficial. And here I am presenting an extremely useful tool for your classrooms, bilingual books. Bilingual books have a number of unique benefits. They prevent language delay that some English language learners may experience, and they build vocabulary in the reader's home language. However, the benefits of bilingual books go far beyond the measurable language effects. One of these benefits is to validate a student's home language. When students see their home language written side by side with the second language, they will identify both languages as being equally important, which is really good for them, for their identity, right? This is a key element in helping dual language students feel that their language is respected and appreciated. And that helps them to be open to learning. And this is our second benefit, right? Develop a positive attitude towards learning. Research shows that being exposed to more than one language builds a better brain. This is especially true for children who are growing up with constant exposure to more than one language. We cannot deny that. As I mentioned, this research show this fact, right? Our third benefit with these bilingual books is that it allows students to understand the text better. When students are given well-written bilingual books, they have the opportunity to absorb quality literature in both languages. This is especially important for bilingual students who are developing their literacy skills in more than one language. It also encourages cultural appreciation. Aside from the linguistic benefits, as I mentioned previously, bilingual books give children the opportunity to see a variety of cultures portrayed in a positive light. Students may feel a personal association with specific cultural events. For example, characters, skin color, clothing items, or foods represented in our stories. Identifying with the characters in these books may help students from diverse backgrounds build a positive self-image in this context. And of course, that is helping to develop and to build a community. If students from different cultural background, are exposed to different cultures, they are going to accept each other with respect and with normality. For them, it's going to be normal to be surrounded by others which are not from their culture. So that helps to build a community. It is well known that some teachers are reluctant to use bilingual books in their classrooms because they worry that the students will only read the words in their stronger language. However, when used appropriately, bilingual books can actually help students master their second language more quickly. The key is to use bilingual books in a variety of contexts. It means that we have to use them in different activities. For example, we can ask them to read out loud, to discuss the story we are presenting for them, to write about the elements from the story, for example, as well. But what is the step-by-step process for this, for the use of bilingual books in our classrooms? The first thing we have to do is recognition. We have to recognize the language represented in the classroom. Why? Because that is going to help us to prepare our material, right? Once we know what is the language that is predominant in our classroom, we are going to prepare the material that is appropriate for our classroom. Preparation. Prepare and select the material and provide the bilingual books using the target language you want to teach, using also the mother tongue or L1 language in order to help them develop their skills. Explore. Do not be afraid. This is our third step and it's very important. Do not be afraid to use vocabulary in various languages. I mean, let's imagine that we have classrooms with students who speak Aymara or Quechua, right? It's important for us to show them that we can also have books with their language, right? We can also have books that can be connected to English in the appropriate context. And that will allow students to use of their home language whenever necessary. Also, once we have prepared our class, we have delivered the session, it's important to evaluate. Because remember, everything we do in class has an objective. And it's important to evaluate if the objectives of our class were achieved, right? Could you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. All right, so here I brought some examples on how we can use this. Because I understand that online, I have a research, we may find certain books, right? But it's important also that you have the opportunity to prepare your own material, right? So here I present two ways in which you can do that. You can introduce a structure in L2, like for example, my mom makes tortillas with a prensa tortillera, and we are using only in Spanish, specific vocabulary. No, as well as here we have on Fridays, I always read the Bible. We are showing, for example, here a sentence with routines in English, but still we are having the keyword or the vocabulary in Spanish. Or you can use the second option, introduce translation of a specific vocabulary in AL2 and the structure in the mother tongue, right? For example, my mom hace tortillas con una tortilla press, o en viernes yo siempre leo la Bible. So that way we can give different approaches to this method of bilingual books. No, this is an example of how you can prepare the material for your bilingual books. Next, please. Thank you. Here I brought also some titles because I want you to see that there are bilingual books online that you can use and you can refer to, right? And they are in different languages, no? All of them, of course, focus on English because the L2 language they are teaching is English, no? But you can see we have some French books, we have some Italian books, Spanish with English, no? We have Chinese also, no? The Very Hungry Caterpillar. I haven't found any book in Aymara or Quechua, but this is a challenge. Probably we, if we have these kind of background students in our classroom, we can prepare that material. And how we can do that? I also brought some one tool that may help you to prepare your own material online, which is really simple to do it. I don't know if we can go to the next slide. This website is called Story Jumper. You can prepare there your material. I brought here just a screen of how it is presented. As you can see, you can find there different templates where you can prepare your own books, and for free, you don't have to pay. The only thing you have to do is to open an account, right? And you can use different colors, different backgrounds, different kinds of letters. You can use also, you can start from scratches if you don't want to take any template as well, right? And after, if you want to print it, which is also an option, you can pay, right? But this is just your option. You can do it virtually or you can print it, right? So I think this the link of this page is going to be on the chat. If you are willing to experiment something new, to prepare some material for your students, I recommend this Story Jumper webpage. It's really easy to handle and it's beautiful. You're gonna love it because you can also add your voice telling the story and giving the story alive, right? This is all for me. I hope you like it. I really think that bilingual books can help us a lot in our classroom. It's a wonderful tool. Okay, I am going to pass the floor to my colleague Miguel Mori. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you, Jessica. Good evening, teachers. Well, cognates, right? Teaching cognates is a good strategy when teaching a language, especially when you teach vocabulary, because cognates are related in origin to another language. They share similar spelling. They have, of course, the same meaning, and the pronunciation in both languages also they're also similar. So it is easy to remember, right? Cognates build bridges between languages. They connect English language words with the student native language. For example, our language Spanish or Quechua or Aymara or any other native language in Peru. Well, cognates make it possible for learners at any age to use new words right away because it is easy to recognize and understand, and it needs no, sorry guys. So it is easy to recognize and understand, and it needs no explanation. Well, by starting with cognate words, a learner can build their vocabulary and gain the confidence they need to add more words in their new language. This way, a student may feel that, well, learning the new language won't be difficult, right? Because they will notice that, okay, there are words that are similar to Spanish or their native language. Now, let's continue with the types of cognate. Thank you. There are three types of cognate. First, we have the perfect cognate. They involve words that are spelled exactly the same way in both languages. They are very close in pronunciation, and of course, the meaning is the same. For example, you can see doctor and doctor, hospital and hospital. Then we have true cognates. These involve words that are spelled very similar, not exactly, but very, very similar. They have, of course, the same meaning and similar pronunciation. This is the case of fiction and fiction, right? They differ only one letter, the T and the C. But be careful with false cognate. This is the third cognate. Well, on the left, we have the word rope and ropa. So a student may think, oh, okay, they're spelled similarly, but they don't mean the same thing in English. So we need to warn students right from the beginning not to make the mistake of assuming that all similar words are cognates, right? To the right, there are other false cognates. We have fabrica and, fabrica. We have carpet and carpeta. And well, the next one I consider the most common among students. They make this mistake a lot. They're thinking that actually is similar to actualmente, but we know that actually means for real, and actualmente refers to the word currently, right? So that's why it is important to clarify that when students see words in English that are similar to their language, they should check the meaning in a dictionary, just in case. You can also encourage your student to ask you as a teacher, right? When they see similar words that they think are cognates, tell them. So before they judge, they should ask, teacher, are these cognates? So that way they clarify that information and they can add it into their list of vocabulary. We as teacher can give some example as well of false cognates, or maybe when we are teaching a class and if we see cognates, right, true or perfect or false cognate, we can point it out very quick, right? You don't have to give a whole class of cognate. You just can say, by the way, this word is a good cognate. It means, for example, if I see hospital, okay, by the way, hospital is a cognate, so they know right away that is the same meaning in Spanish or their native language. Or the same thing with false cognate, right? Well, depending on the situation. Well, now it's your turn, teachers, right? Please type some cognate word, in the chat box, okay? Let me see some. Okay, if you can see, type some cognate words, in the chat box. Let's see, popular, very good. Lecture, lectura, very good. I have cognate, all right, cognados, cognate. I guess that's what majority means. Norma said dentist, secretary, sorry. Okay, very good. Christian says radio or radio. Excellent. Table and tabla could be considered false cognate, table and tabla. They may think they are the same, but that's when you point out, no, that's not true cognate or perfect cognate. Those are just false cognate. Bar, Lu says bar, hamburguesa, hamburger, false and falso, computer, cartoon, carton, okay? And cartoon is depending, right? Because cartoon is usually that, los dibujitos, and carton in English, like it's a board, like cardboard. So be careful with those words. Yes, that can be considered false cognate. Very good. I see doctor, library. Library could be a false cognate, right? Because library is a place where you go to read books. Some student may think it's the place you go to buy books, which is a bookstore, right? Okay, excellent, everybody. Thank you very much. Well, next, my colleague Carla will talk about the topic preview, view, and review. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miguel. So now please let me tell you, my dear teachers, about our next strategy, which is preview, view, review. This strategy, as many of the ones that have already been presented, involves the use of both students' mother tongue as well as L2, which is English for us. There are 4 steps to this strategy. The first step is the preview or pre-reading. Here, this step is done at home, and yes, at home. It involves us teacher looking for or selecting some material, be it videos or maybe short articles that students can read in advance, maybe a day or two prior to the lesson. And this material has to be in students' mother tongue. Then the second step, which is view, involves two big components. That is the presentation and evaluation, right? Where we will test the students' understanding of our lesson. This is what we normally do in class. Here, of course, this of course will be done in L2, which is for us English, right? Now, the last step is the review or closing. In this step, we promote students' higher thinking skills, and this step can be done either in students' mother tongue or in English. It depends on what they feel more comfortable with. There are many benefits to this strategy. First of all, this strategy helps students understand or comprehend the content better and in advance, which generates and fosters interest in the lesson we are about to teach, maybe a day or two later. And of course, it also promotes self-confidence and helps students participate more in class because they already know something about the topic and they feel eager to share what they have previously learned with the rest of their classmates. Now, please, let's take a look at an example. Let's imagine that we have to work on this reading article in class. Are modern children really less patient? To better understand this article, it would be beneficial for students to know about an experiment called Don't Eat the Marshmallow Yet. So we need to first work with the preview step. We will select some material, be it a video or maybe a short article about the topic that we can give to students and they can read this material, watch the video maybe a day or two in advance. This material, of course, remember, has to be in students' mother tongue. After that, the day of the lesson comes the second step, which is view. Here we will develop our lesson as we normally would, from the warm-up to students reading the article, to students answering some questions, maybe developing some other activities, and of course with us testing how well students understood the topic and what we were trying to get to in the objective. Finally, we move on to the last step, which is the review or closing, which is more of a wrap-up. Here, of course, as previously mentioned, we are trying to promote students' higher thinking skills, so maybe metacognition questions are a great idea to add here. A question for them could be, for instance, do you think you and your friends have good self-control? Explain. So that motivates students to think a little bit more about what they saw before and expand on it. Of course, these last questions could be answered either in Spanish or in their mother tongue or in English. It depends on them, of course. As you can see, this is a very useful strategy, especially for students who are struggling a little bit with acquiring L2. This is a great way to support them. So that's it with this strategy. Thank you very much for your attention. And now I'll pass the floor to my colleague, Luis de la Vega, who will talk a little bit about scaffolding.
Thank you so much, Carla. Now, everybody, we have one very interesting strategy for scaffolding. Let's picture the situation. Let's imagine that we expect one student to go from the first floor to the second floor, to reach from the first floor to the second floor in one jump. Given the proficiency of the students in English or a different language, for some students, doing that might be achievable, but for some other students, it might not be possible. Expecting our students to pull off that kind of feat might be setting them up for failure. That's why we have to apply different techniques, such as scaffolding, which is going to be to break down our activities in different chunks, moments, in order to make the students able to reach that objective. First of all, we have to give the necessary resources to build our students' skills step by step. In that case, review, view, review could be used in this part. We have to build the new knowledge on old knowledge, previous knowledge. So it is important to assess what students can do and what they can achieve before we apply this technique. After we do that, We have to break down the lessons. We have to break down the activities into comprehensible steps in that aspect. And then with each step, we have to provide material, but it doesn't have to be material. It could also be moments, guidance, specific moments designed to develop reflection, to point out different parts, and so they can develop different skills in that case. That could be a good part for them to develop communicative skills. And they could also develop, for example, meta language in order to continue with this process. As well, the teacher is going to accompany the students in each step of the way in order to achieve their learning outcome. Now, let's check some examples in the next part. For example, scaffolding can be used for all of these skills in speaking, in listening, in reading, in writing. Teachers around the world can also use scaffolding for different subjects, such as mathematics and others. In speaking, listening, in reading, and writing, we have to assess the students' knowledge, and we have to plan our activities carefully. We can review previous vocabulary. We can pair them up. We can make them discuss different questions. And they can also, again, they can get engaged in metalinguistic activities so they can get to compare and reflect on the process they are doing. For example, it can also be a good way to develop biliteracy, which is becoming proficient in both reading and writing. For writing, it is very effective. I have the personal experience in scaffolding in writing, but we have to take a look into this. Let's first assess the level of the students. We can have Lucy, Pepe, Oliver, for example, in that case, all of them with different language proficiency. It could be basic level, intermediate level, or advanced level. For some students, such as Oliver, for example, advanced level of English, scaffolding every technique, scaffolding all the techniques might not be necessary. This student can perform well and might not need the scaffolding for something that is not in the same way as Lucy in that part, or Pepe. So we have to be careful about what techniques, about what steps we should scaffold or not. Let's remember that scaffolding is about giving support, but also is to make the students be able to go to the next level, in which they can develop their skills carefully. Thank you so much. Now we are going to give the floor to Christian for code switching. Christian, the audience is yours.
Thank you very much, Luis. So before we go to the next technique, let me ask you one question. So how many times have you heard your students using their L1 or Spanish in class? It happens like all the time, doesn't it? In my case, in my experience, teaching in a school and also in an institute, it has happened a lot of times. Like my students, when I give them a speaking task, they usually use Spanish in order to communicate their ideas. But that comes with the next technique. So it has a name, and the name is code switching. So what is code switching? So code switching or language alternation happens or occurs when a speaker alternates between two or more languages. In order to provide you an insight of this, we're going to show you a video. So let's take a look at the video and let's see how it works.
I'm Celeste Roseberry. In this video, we're going to see some students code switch. Hi, I'm Celeste Roseberry. In this video, we're going to see some students code switching between Spanish and English. Code switching is a typical I'm Celeste Roseberry. In this video, we're going to see some students code switching between Spanish and English. Code switching is a typical behavior found among bilinguals worldwide.
So Brianna, ¿qué vas a hacer este verano? Pues I think I'm just going to trabajar y luego voy a ir, I think I'm going to LA for a weekend and quiero dormir. Porque, you know, we don't get much sleep in this major.
Oh my God, me too. I want to sleep. Quiero dormirme y nunca despertar, dude.
¿Tú qué vas a hacer este verano?
Yo voy a ir a Rosarito, then voy a ir a Mexico, and then I'm gonna go to LA for like a weekend, and then I'm gonna sleep,
También dormir.
enjoy the rest of my life.
What are you doing in LA?
My novio, he wants to this is so embarrassing. He wants to go do the little LCS. This is a League of Legends like gaming thing.
Okay.
And they do like tournaments or something, and then we're gonna have a fun day on Sunday. So we're just gonna go do that, and then we're gonna have a fun day on Sunday. Lo estoy tratando de convencer a ir a San Diego para ir a las playas.
¿Y si quiere ir o no?
Oh yeah, the beaches are fun.
Well, because you said que lo estás tratando de convencer. So.
Oh, es que it's not LA, it's San Diego, right? So it's another like an hour drive.
Yeah. Son como 3 hours.
No, the LA and San Diego?
Really?
No, it's like an hour and a half. It's so close.
Well, then, yo estoy manejando como a 50 por hora.
No,
tampoco. Me perdí. I probably just got lost.
We just saw some students speaking in Spanish and English and code switching. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.
Okay, so after having seen or watched this video, as you can see, we usually use code switching when we forget maybe a word in our L2 and we want to use Spanish in order to convey the complete idea. So is it bad if we use code switching in our classes? I don't think it's bad. It actually helps the student be more comfortable when speaking in English. It also helps them develop their L2 using their L1, which is not bad at all, because it helps them, as I said, have a deeper understanding of the English. And it also happens to some of us. Sometimes we tend to forget words, and that's because we have a lot of things in our minds. And after having said this, let me ask you, do you think code switching can work in your classrooms? Do you think, or are you gonna be like the teacher that tells the students, English, guys, and only English? So what do you think? Do you think it's gonna be useful for you? So you can type it in the chat if you're gonna use it or not. And why do you think it's a good idea to use it? Okay, I'm gonna be reading some of your comments, and I'm gonna have my colleague Soledad continue with the next technique, which is the keyword method.
Yes. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much, Christian. So let's continue with the next, method here. I'm going to talk about the keyword method. What is it? Yes, how do we use it? How can we use it in a classroom? So the keyword method, it is used to memorize the meaning behind vocabulary words. Is when a person uses what a word sounds like to visualize something memorable that will help them later recall the definition. Yes, so this is a strategy for learning freaky new words. We use a keyword to unlock the meaning of a new word. What is great about this strategy is that it is flexible. It works for any content area. Here you can see it is very useful for those students, EL, those English language learners, and also for multilingual learners, right? Yes, and it can be really helpful for any content area, and it doesn't matter the age. How do we use it? We have 3 steps to follow. Yes, let's continue with the next slide, please. Okay, so we have the 3 steps. First, pick up keyword that sounds like the unfamiliar word that you are trying to learn. Yes, when you pick a keyword, pick a concrete object that is very easy for you to picture in your mind. Next step is to mix it. You take your keyword and combine it with a definition of your unfamiliar word. So you relate that keyword, your keyword, to the meaning of the unfamiliar word. Make it memorable so it can stick in your mind. The last step, is to use it. When you hear your unfamiliar word, you're going to remember your keyword And that will cue you to remember the image or the scene you imagined previously, and that will tell you the definition. Here you have an example. Yes, we have the keyword that is barrister. Yeah, a barrister is another word for a lawyer. Barrister sounds like bird, so I picked it. Now I'm going to mix it. Picture a bird dressed like a lawyer going to court. Yes, and number 3, use it. When you hear the word barrister, recall the fancy verb lawyer to help you remember the meaning of the word. And that's how we apply this keyword method in a classroom. Let's continue with Sharon. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Soledad. And now I've seen that you have interact a lot in our chat. So now it's gonna be your turn. Okay, so I have some questions for you to see if you have been paying attention. I know you have. So I'm gonna show you some questions and you will have to answer in the chat, please, in the chat, just A, B, or C. What is the correct answer, okay? So let's go with our first question, please. All right, so this question is about meta language. At the beginning of our webinar, we were talking about this topic. And the question is, this word is not an example of meta language. And we have pronouns, he, nouns. So which one do you think is the correct answer? This word is not an example of meta language. Is it A, B, or C? So what do you think? Please write in the chat. I'm gonna wait for your answers. Think a little bit. Okay, let's see who's first. You can write your answers in the chat. All right, Magnolia says B. What do you say, guys? All right, we also have B again. It says Lydia. He, some others are writing the word. Okay, that's fine. You can put A, B, or C. Okay, wow, a lot of answers. So you have been paying attention because the correct answer is he or letter B. Good job, everybody. And let's continue with our next question, please. All right, so this is about bilingual books. My colleague Jessica talked about this topic, and we have a blank, a student's home language. So which do you think is the answer? We have allows, which is A, validates B, or helps C. So what do you say? What do you think is the answer? This is question number 2 about bilingual books. All right, so we have some answers here. Carmen says B, Marcela B, Lady, Elizabeth B, Luz. This is from the previous questions. Okay, right now we're on question number 2 about bilingual books. We have a blank and says students' home language. So what do you think is the answer? Allows A, validates B, or helps C? Karina says B, Martina B, Sarah B, Sandra Oblitas B. Thank you very much for all of your answers, for all of your engagement. My English lessons, oh, okay, that's from the previous. Thank you very much to everyone who is participating. Wow, we have so many answers. Megalit Santos says B, Richard says B, Marita, Alberca, B, we have some A, but the correct answer here is also letter B, validates students' home language, right? All right, we can move on to question number 3 now. And this question is about code switching. Do you remember that video that my colleague presented about code switching? And so there is another name for code switching, also called speaking, also called biliteracy, also called language alternation. So what do you think is the correct answer for number 3? Code switching, also called A, B, or C. A is speaking, B, biliteracy, and C, language alternation. All right, we still have some answers from the previous question. Okay, how about this one, guys? Number 3, code switching. All right, we have Flor de María González said C, Santi C, Liz Diaz Cueva B, Marilyn, it says, it happened, so many messages, I can't read your names. Thank you very much for all of your participation. Margarita Sanchez says B, Danilo said C, Carmen Neira C. So what do you think about code switching, right? Remember the video, what happened there? Aida Melendez said C, Rosa Hilda Guerrero said C, Rosana Pacheco B, Rita Inés, letter C, Carmen Campos B, Sara Lucía says B also, Rocío del Pilar, letter B. So what is the answer, guys? Can I tell you? It is letter C, language alternation. Yeah, because remember in the video they were switching code, that's why it's called code switching, but it's also a language alternation. Okay, good job. Thank you very much for all of your answers. You are doing great. Thank you very much for all of your engagement. And now we're going to continue with our last question. Number 4, please. And this one, it's about another strategy presented today. It's scaffolding. And here I want the complete answers. No A, B, C. This time I want you to write in the chat the complete answer. And the question is, this strategy can be applied to develop, and the options are reading, listening, writing, speaking, or all. So which one do you think is the correct answer here? This is about scaffolding. Now you have to write the answer. No A, B, C, but just give me the answer in the chat. What do you think? This strategy can be applied to develop reading, writing, listening, speaking, or all of them? Okay, I'm gonna wait for your answers because I think you're still answering the previous questions. This is question number 4. Scaffolding. Okay, what do you think? This strategy can be applied to develop what? Is it reading, writing, listening, speaking, or all? Write in the chat, please. I'm gonna wait for your comments a little bit. Okay. So what do you say? I'm gonna wait a little bit longer for your answers. This strategy can be applied to develop. All right, let's see your answers in the chat. Please tell me, what do you think? Is it reading, listening, writing, speaking, or all of them? Okay. Thank you very much. I can't see the answers then because there are so many messages, but thank you very much for all of your participation. And I will give the floor to my colleague, Jesus.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you, Sharon. I think the scaffolding This strategy can be applied to develop all of them, all of the language domains or language skills: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. I can read the answers here. So Dalia, Pequeña, Marlene Elias, Liz Diaz, Jessica, Maria Pérez, Maria Santillán, Pamela Chalco, Lady Vanessa, Ismelda. We also have people from Colombia, Ecuador. Thank you so much for joining us today, just to see these great people facilitating this webinar. As you can see, we had two big moments here. We had the theory on one side. So we talk about meta language, we talk about translanguaging, and we also talk about biliteracy. Right? Those are the big ideas that we have when we talk about cross-language connections. And then on the other side, so part B, we talk about different ways to cross-language, right? Alrighty, so let me just skip this to the next slide. And all the things that we said that we present today, so we have the references, so you can check them out later too, okay? So we have references for the different topics that we discussed today, especially cross-language connections, the big ideas, the big concepts that we talked about today, okay? And this is very important. Thank you so much just for being with us today, this evening. I think you've met all my students today and they did a great job. So 10 claps on 10 for them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think they did a great job. Thank you so much. Carla, Sergio, Christopher, Jesse, Luis, Marilyn, Carlos, Andrés, Jessica, Miguel, Christian, Soledad, Sharon, and all of you, of course, all of you teachers who join us today. Alrighty, and this is our gift to you. So we're sharing with you different videos based on the cross-language strategies, bilingual books, the cognate instruction, strategic use of language, así se dice, and code switching. All righty, and let me go back now to the thank you slide. So thank you one more time, and then we have Mariela. Mariela, you can continue now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jesus. Thank you so much to your team for this amazing presentation. It was so interesting. And we have some questions for you. Here, please. Wait a
All right,
second.
so I'm going to ask my students to turn on the camera so we can answer those questions together. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Yes, see.
Okay, good.
Juancito, Christian, Miguelito.
Hello, everyone. And thank you to all of you. Now, the first question, Jesus, is before the question, so we have some greetings for you, obviously from all the English teachers in Peru, and another teachers too. So they are here. Marjorie Lursalda's greetings from Guayaquil for you, dear teachers. Dani Apiri, good afternoon from Panama. Mirka Rodriguez, good evening from La Paz, Bolivia. Some greetings from Mexico, Argentina, and it was really amazing. It was a great presentation, dear teachers. So we have the first question for you. This is from Cesar Pablo. He said, Cesar Pablo says, in a monolingual class, using L1 seems to be more practical and straightforward. How can we use translanguaging when teaching a class where students come from different language backgrounds? Okay, thank you, Jessie. Jessie, can you answer the question? Yeah, that's okay.
Sure. All right. Well, as I mentioned during my presentation, translanguaging is not something you come up with in the middle of the class, okay? It's something that we should plan in advance. Considering a class with different languages, we should prepare the questions in all those languages. Being a monolingual teacher, a bilingual teacher, we should look for the translation of the questions we want to ask our students in their languages, and give them the resources in their languages so they can participate of these activities. So it's not a problem if we don't speak everybody's languages or native languages. We can prepare, right, the activity in advance. That's the main point of translanguaging.
Okay, thank you so much, dear. And we have another question here.
Can I add to what Jessie said?
Yeah.
So translanguaging, translanguaging takes different forms. So one of the big, huge forms is translanguaging as a pedagogy. So, or translanguaging as a model, right? So we have different schools, and let me say this from the point of view of a multilingual teacher, okay? Or English as a second language teacher. So if you are in a speaking language country, okay, and we have some students, or in a classroom, for example, and the question was, okay, what if you have some students that speak Spanish, students who speak Portuguese, students who speak Chinese, and then we have some students from South Africa who speaks Somali. And Jessie says something very important. So if it's a pedagogy, so it is a practice, it is a teaching practice. And so since this comes from a model or a pedagogy, so all teachers should be trained in applying translanguaging. So translanguaging practices. And Jessie presented this example of a group of students, just they can access the information or the content presented by the teacher in their home language. So translanguaging is used as a bridge to access the English content. And for example, Jessie was also mentioning about this example of assigning one student or the group of students, okay, you read in your home language or native language, and then you discuss with your group in English. With the little English that you know, you can use that output to connect with other students from different backgrounds. And then you can present in your home language or in English. So there are decisions between the planning. And it's very important to know that since this is used as a pedagogy or as a bridge to access the content in the classroom, it takes planning. It takes resources. So you need to trust your students' home language. And then if you use bilingual books too, so you validate. If you use your students' home language, you're validating your language matters, is important. So you can use that to access the concepts or ideas the teacher is using in a monolingual classroom. Yes. Thank you, Mariela.
Thank you so much, Jesus. It's so clear now, I guess. Now we have another question from Robert. He says, I have a question. When we work with así se dice, do we necessarily develop phonetics and idioms with the students, or is it just a matter of translating and interpreting the language in that way? Okay, Andres.
Thank you very much. I might answer that question. I think that it's always a good opportunity to practice pronunciation. I wouldn't say it's just a matter of translating, interpreting. I think it's possible to practice pronunciation. I don't think, for example, with kids, we practice phonetics or phonetic symbols. At least I haven't seen that. Maybe as they move forward, maybe if they reach high school, probably it'll be a very good idea to practice some phonetics with them, with the students. Now, regarding the idioms, I would say that this is part of the challenges that they face, right? I'd say that they are very useful because as we know, idioms don't have exact translations into other languages. So students are challenged to come up with a fair translation based on what they interpret by some given information. So I think it's a good idea to practice phonetics, some pronunciation, and also idioms. It's very challenging for students, and I think they like that. It's what makes Así se dice so catchy for students. They like to be challenged as well. So I'd say that.
Thank you so much, Andres. Okay, and I think the same. So we can develop more skills with this nice strategy.
Can I add that to Andresito?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, and let me say this in Spanish. Okay, let me use my home language, español. Okay, así se dice es una estrategia que se utiliza bastante el metalenguaje, ¿cierto? Partimos de estas ideas grandes de metalenguaje, translingüismo y también el desarrollo de las dos lenguas, la lengua nativa y también la lengua extranjera. Cuando hacemos uso de así se dice que es una estrategia de cross language, estamos conectando nosotros el idioma materno con el idioma que se va a aprender. Y ahí utilizamos bastante el metalingüismo. Vamos a comparar y vamos a contrastar. ¿Qué es lo que hay en tu idioma materno y qué es lo que hay en el idioma extranjero o lengua 2? Lengua 1 y lengua 2. Vamos a buscar las similitudes y vamos a buscar las diferencias. Y es allí donde el estudiante que habla un idioma va a ver el contenido en un idioma extranjero y va a hacer esas conexiones. Entonces, es una estrategia que va más allá de idiomas o idioms o expresiones o de la pronunciación. Estamos creando estudiantes que sean capaces de leer, escribir, hablar y escuchar en un idioma extranjero, pero al 100%, eso con mucha capacidad. Y eso requiere también el desarrollo de el pensamiento crítico, el pensamiento creativo, la colaboración, trabajo en equipo o las 4 Cs, ¿no? La creatividad, el pensamiento crítico, la colaboración y también mucha comunicación. Pero también Andrés manifestó que eso tiene que verse en el aula para desarrollar el biliteracy, ¿cierto? O sea, ambos idiomas. Gracias.
Thank you so much, Jesus. And I have a comment here, and I like to have your opinion about this comment. Dalia Tiki Quiros. So the teacher says, my students understand English, but they answer in Spanish. So it happens a lot in our English classes. What do you think about that? Maybe some strategy that we can use? Okay, Christian.
Oh, well, regarding the question that you just asked, that the person asked, sorry, we can use an anchor chart. As my colleague Juan mentioned, anchor charts give the opportunity to order your ideas. So you can start providing or guiding students with prompts. So we can provide them prompts in order for them to formulate the answer. The anchor chart does that. So the anchor chart gives students this kind of structure in order for them to have a clear or in order to have a better order in the ideas. So when the students don't know a word, you can give them the prompt, and the prompt is going to help them create maybe the sentence that they want to convey as the answer.
Thank you, Christian. Okay, maybe can you add some
Yeah,
ideas
of
if you
course.
want?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, cuando tenemos un estudiante en el salón de clases que dice entender y dice las respuestas en español, también hay que ver el contexto en donde nos encontramos. Por ejemplo, eso sucede mucho en contextos donde hay escuelas multilingües o escuelas donde se enseña el inglés como un segundo idioma. Pero si hablamos de un contexto monolingüe, un contexto donde el inglés tiene el estatus de inglés como idioma extranjero, que es en el caso de nuestro querido Perú, ¿cierto? Ese estatus del inglés es inglés como lengua extranjera. Ahora, lo que mencionaba Cristian es muy importante, es decir, tenemos que darles aquellos soportes y hablamos también de los scaffolds, las ayudas visuales o ayudas de oraciones, o de repente quizás darle las primeras dos palabras, se llama sentence stem, o si no de repente en una oración darle el sentence frame. So, que también hay que ver mucho el objetivo de la clase, ¿cierto? ¿Cuál es el objetivo que se tiene que lograr en una clase? Después en una unidad de aprendizaje, al término de cada unidad, cuál es el objetivo y cómo voy a medir eso. Pero en una sencilla respuesta, Cristian lo ha dado también, o sea, hay que ayudar al estudiante con scaffolds, con anchor charts, que nos van a ayudar muchísimo a responder, porque yo puedo responder la pregunta en inglés, pero necesito yo la ayuda, porque va a depender mucho en qué nivel de inglés de proficiencia se encuentra el estudiante. De verdad, y ahora regreso nuevamente a lo que nuestro compañero, acá lo tengo yo, a Luis, por ejemplo, sobre scaffolding. Habían 3 estudiantes, un estudiante estaba en un nivel de inglés alto, otro intermedio y otro bajo. Entonces, en esa clase, y eso pasa también en nuestras escuelas donde el inglés tiene el estatus de inglés como lengua extranjera, cuando hay estudiantes, nos ponen un salón y hay estudiantes que tienen varios niveles. Es un aula mixta en cuanto a niveles de inglés. Entonces, ¿qué hacemos ahí? Lo importante es evaluar. Vamos a hacer un assessment. ¿Qué sabe el estudiante? ¿Y qué ayudas yo voy a ayudar, que voy a proponer para el estudiante 1, el estudiante 2, que están en distintos niveles, puedan lograr el objetivo de la sesión o el objetivo de la unidad de aprendizaje? Pero esas dos estrategias de anchor charts y scaffolds nos van a ayudar bastante a ayudar a ese estudiante a producir, porque es importante que uno tenga, ¿no? El input es importante, pero también el output. Que hable español, yo estoy encantadísimo, realmente, porque validamos el idioma español, ¿cierto? El idioma de casa, el idioma nativo. Pero también, ¿cuál es el objetivo? Queremos que el estudiante hable, utilice el idioma inglés y hay que brindarles esos apoyos. Gracias, Mariela.
Muchas gracias, Jesús, a ti por toda la claridad, a cada uno de ustedes por todos los ejemplos. Veía una parte de la presentación cuando hablaba, por ejemplo, de la reflexión, ¿no? Es algo que de repente, si el nivel del inglés del estudiante no lo permite, puede hacerlo en su idioma nativo. Es algo que vi ahí, ¿no? Con respecto de repente a la parte reflexiva en el aprendizaje de la lengua, del idioma inglés, que a veces no es muy fácil hacer esa metacognición como quisiéramos, ¿no? Depende mucho del nivel del inglés, las estrategias muy buenas. Gracias en nombre de toda la comunidad de English Teachers in Perú. Les pedimos por favor que se queden unos minutitos más con nosotros para poder cerrar juntos la sesión de hoy. Y bien, vamos a continuar entonces en este momento compartiendo y viendo qué tenemos para el día de mañana. Y para el día de mañana tenemos una muy buena presentación. Vamos entonces a ver aquí. Kurt, are you there, dear Kurt? Can you share the invitation for tomorrow's webinar?
Yes, Maria, thank you.
Okay, Kurt, thank you. Okay.
So, we have a meeting on Sunday 20th, 2022 at 6. So that means tomorrow. We're gonna have the presence of Francisco Guamantica. He's gonna present a webinar entitled Developing Listening Skills in the Classroom. So we have a meeting tomorrow at 6. You cannot miss it.
Thank you, dear Court. Yeah, yes, we have an amazing webinar tomorrow. No olviden, por favor, estar presentes. Ya estamos a puertas de cerrar y estos últimos webinars tienen muchas sorpresas para ustedes, así que tienen que estar conectadísimos y compartimos en este momento el exit ticket con ustedes. En este momento también lo van a fijar en el chat de YouTube. Recuerden que el link inicia, como siempre, https://cutt.ly/ y esta última parte debe estar tal cual la ven aquí. Si no pueden hacer clic desde el chat de YouTube, pueden tomar un pantallazo y luego ustedes digitarlo en su navegador de forma correcta, tal como lo ven aquí, respetando mayúscula y minúscula. Después del último slash tenemos el número 11, TH en minúscula, ET en mayúscula, I en minúscula, P en mayúscula. Recuerden, por favor, que desde este link van a recibir el formulario en donde van a poder registrar su asistencia y completar además con algunas preguntitas que tenemos sobre el webinar de hoy, que seguramente van a ser bien respondidas, tal como lo han hecho en la última parte de la presentación, con una excelente participación. Bien, entonces ahora sí, recuerden que solo está habilitado por 15 minutitos. Nos despedimos a nombre de toda la comunidad de administradores, en este caso English Teachers in Perú, quienes son los encargados de hacer posible cada uno de estos webinars, quienes están detrás de toda la organización, a todos mis colegas que se encuentran en diferentes regiones de nuestro bello país Perú y a todos los asistentes también que vienen, se conectan de diferentes países, por supuesto en su mayoría de nuestro país. Muchísimas gracias. Vamos a dejar de compartir para poder encender las camaritas, por favor. Si estamos aquí presentes, a todos nuestros invitados del día de hoy, quienes han compartido, considero yo, un tema bastante interesante con estrategias claras, muy claras para poder aplicar en aula. Realmente muchísimas gracias a cada uno de ustedes por la presentación del día de hoy. Para empezar, las gracias a Jesús, quien ha aceptado la invitación que se le ha hecho. Muchísimas gracias también por estar presente el día de hoy con todo tu equipo, quienes han compartido con nosotros ideas geniales que las vamos a poner en práctica definitivamente en el aula, porque han compartido algo o un tema muy relacionado a lo que vivimos realmente en nuestras instituciones, sobre todo en las instituciones públicas, ¿no? El tema del uso del idioma que a veces pues muchos lo han penalizado, ¿no? Y se cree que no sirve para nada, pero creo que el día de hoy, con todo lo que ustedes han compartido, nos ha quedado claro que sí, que hay formas correctas de poder utilizar nuestro idioma para poder desarrollar también el aprendizaje del idioma inglés. Muchísimas gracias a estimado Juan Ñavincopa, a Jessica Karina Adriancé, Marilyn Cadillo, Carla Mariela Ledesma, Andrés Ernesto Ávila, Cristian Jeremy Ramírez, Luis de la Vega, a Christopher Miguel Vera, Sharon Belén John Top. Muchas gracias Jessica Maribel, a Miguel Ángel Mori, Soledad Rivera, a Sergio Alexander. Miles de gracias, por supuesto a ti, querido Jesús. Tal vez algunas palabras antes de culminar con este webinar.
No, básicamente es agradecerles a todos por la presencia, a todos y también a este equipo maravilloso de estudiantes, ¿no? Gracias por el tiempo. Se ha preparado con mucha anticipación y han dado lo mejor y creo que ha sido brillante la exposición de cada uno de ellos el día de hoy y espero realmente que lo que hayamos presentado el día de hoy tenga un impacto en todos los presentes. A título personal, tiene un impacto grande y fenomenal. Así que también acá está mi amigo Kurt, Hola, Kurt, ¿cómo estás? Y saludos también para la gente que está detrás, bajo el liderazgo de Mariela. Un fortísimo abrazo. Y no sé si mis estudiantes desean decir algo, unas palabritas antes de decir adiós.
Bueno, agradecemos la oportunidad que nos hayan escuchado. En serio, es un gran honor poder compartir este conocimiento y que todos podamos aprender unos de otros. Es una gran experiencia estar aquí con todos ustedes. Estoy muy agradecido por esta oportunidad y por todos. Y muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias a ti, Luis. Casi 500 maestros conectados, la mayoría peruanos y de diferentes partes del mundo. Chicos, no sean tímidos. Así que esperamos un mensajito suyo. A ver, de repente alguno de ustedes más se anima a dar un mensajito, a aprovechar este espacio y seguramente que cada uno de sus consejos o mensajes van a calar en cada uno de los maestros que aún están conectados en nuestro webinar.
Agradecerte, Mariela, por la oportunidad de poder presentar algo de lo que nosotros, ¿no?, hemos aprendido con Mr. Nicho en nuestras clases y definitivamente, ¿no?, quisiéramos poder aplicar y ver en nuestras clases propias. Y espero que sí, como dijo Mr. Nicho, que se lleven algo de lo que hemos visto el día de hoy y que pueda ser relevante para ustedes también. Estoy segura que si si lo aplican, van a ver de que los resultados van a ser óptimos y van a comprobar de que sí, la lengua materna sirve para afianzar el conocimiento del idioma inglés definitivamente.
Muchísimas gracias, estimada Jessica, si no puedo estar más de acuerdo contigo. No sé si hay alguien más para si no poder pasar con los administradores. ¿Sí alguien se anima? Ya. No, están ya dijeron bastante, dice durante toda la
Creo que
sesión.
Andrés quiso
Andrés,
decir
¿sí?
algo. Sí, pero
No,
movió sus labios, no sé. Ahí está.
no, creo que
Es la sonrisa, es la emoción de estar aquí en la
muchas
comunidad
gracias.
del día de hoy.
Muchas gracias por la oportunidad. Muchas gracias.
Gracias a ti, Andrés. Gracias a todo el equipo. El día de hoy he estado con todos ustedes también. Bueno, nuestros administradores que ya han estado por aquí, como hace rato ahí está mi querido Kurt Vilela Matos, que está ahí, administrador de la
Kurt,
comunidad. Pamela Salazar, que
Pamelita.
también está por ahí, Pamelita linda, que ha estado dentro de la ruta del webinar, a nuestro estimado maestro José Ortega, teacher Ortega, que está detrás de toda la conexión, y muchísimas gracias a todos los maestros que han estado conectados el día de hoy. Nos vemos el día de mañana. Bye, bye.